Ted,
Great.
great to see you, man. Welcome to Popternative.
Thank you. Great to see you as well.
You know, it's really crazy because every time a new, first of all, congrats with season 3 of The Lincoln Lawyer. I mean, top 10 in over 20 countries on Netflix. It's unbelievable. I'm so happy for you and the team. Every time you make a new season of a show, it's like, how are we going to make it bigger? How are we going to make it better? Even
Yes.
before kind of reading scripts or table reads and everything, what are those preliminary thoughts for you as showrunner and EP on that? Like, what are the first things about making it bigger, coming back for another season?
It's exactly what you just said. How many
I
topics
just
did
answered
last
my
time?
own question. I guess that's my film creative hat on as
Well,
well.
yeah, we set so this season we set up last season,
Yeah.
and Netflix, streaming lends itself really well to that because it gives you the ability to do a cliffhanger of sorts at the end of a season, and then it's part of what obviously gets audiences juiced to come back the following season. You don't always have to do that. I think sometimes it's cheesy to do that, but we had a really effective one, I felt, at the end of last season with the discovery that his longtime client and friend Glory Days was dead, and what did that mean? He'd been asked actually by the person accused of killing her to represent him, and what did that mean? And so we knew that that would tee up the most personal case he's ever had prior, in comparison to the first two seasons coming into this season, and that would give us a great thing to hang our hat on going into this season.
Yeah,
Obviously,
absolutely.
we've done the same at the end of this season to propel us into what we'll
Well,
hope.
it's a perfect segue to my next question because I feel like anytime you have something like a TV show like this, like an amazing show like Lincoln Lawyer that had original source material that it's kind of based on, I feel like there's this kind of like tug and war a little bit, push and pull of what are we going to do that's from the novels? What are we going to do different? Are there a lot of conversations about that? Because I feel like at the end of the day, you're going to have the people that love the books who are excited to see what happens, but these are not the novels, right? This is the Lincoln Lawyer on Netflix, right? So I'm just wondering if you think about that. I feel like it's challenging at times, to be honest with you.
It is, but it's also a great opportunity. And we have the founder of our feast along for the ride, and Michael
Yeah.
Connelly. He's an executive producer on the show. He's in our writers' room a lot, and he loves the show. And he's also very, very collaborative. So he's the
Yeah.
first person to say, let's do things different from what's in the book, or this never really worked for me. Let's make it better.
Yeah.
The other thing he always says is that for his audience, meaning his readers, the shows are a great opportunity to rediscover the books, and they're different enough that people don't necessarily know what's going to happen. We have changed quite a bit from the books.
Mhm.
And so even people who love the books and know them chapter and verse can watch the show and not know what's going to happen next and sort of re-experience them in a new way, which is great, obviously, for them.
Absolutely. No, I think it's very interesting. I feel like there could be just a podcast series just on like people talking about the adaptations to live action series like from a book because I just feel like especially with a TV show, right? Where you
Yeah.
can have like multiple seasons based on multiple books. Like I feel like a movie is different too because it's like 2 hours done, right? Based on unless you have a sequel. But I just find like it's interesting with live action like TV series. But I find
I
it
mean,
interesting.
obviously, it's like Game of Thrones went beyond the book, and he still hasn't published the next book, and he may never. We don't know, but
I'm telling
they,
you, podcast series is
and
just
I've
like
read
never
all those
ending.
books, and the show differs greatly from the books, and in some ways is better, and in some ways, particularly in the last season, maybe wasn't as good. But yeah.
Oh, 100%. I find it really interesting as well because when I ask actors this question, it's always you try not to or not really. But as one of the showrunners of the Lincoln Lawyer, I want to ask you this: once you go to camera, right, and like its production started, and
Yes.
you're checking in and seeing what's going on, are you ever conscious of the audience member watching the Lincoln Lawyer while it's being made, or is that something you think about? Like before going to camera, after going to camera. Like I'm curious about that. Like, are you ever conscious of the audience member? Because it's got twists and turns. People are very invested in it. People love shows like this, and they binge it right away. Do you think about those things while it's being made?
Well, we think about it while it's being made. I don't know that I necessarily think more about it in front of the camera than I do when I'm writing it or when
Yeah,
I'm editing it, right? I mean, it's kind of in my mind, it's all one process. It's
yeah,
all one long process. I will say that it is a big difference from the current streaming ecosphere to what used to be network TV.
yes,
Because in network TV, you had this opportunity to almost consider in real time what the audience was responding to and to write to it.
yeah,
Because when we did The Good Wife, at the tightest part of the season, it would be no more than 2.5 months from when you were coming up with an idea in the writer's room, not writing a script, but just coming up with the idea, to when it was on the air. That's how fast that turnaround was. So you really did have this almost real-time ability to respond to what the audience was responding to. In streaming or premium cable, that timeline is a lot longer.
It's so interesting because you're the perfect example of this, because I talk about this all the time. I love both ways how we consume television. I love the week to weeks and I love the binge. I think there's a room for both of them, honestly. You worked on both ways, basically. You did the Good Wife week to week drops, the dinner table prediction conversations, and then you did the Lincoln Lawyer all drops. It's interesting, right, to see where we've come with television and that you kind of worked in both of those drops.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually even a three-way difference, because back at network TV, it was being made as you were consuming it. Even the week-to-week drops that they do on, say, Apple, those are still made a year in advance. They're just dropping them week to week.
Yeah.
As between week to week and binge, I just think there's room for both. I love both.
Me too.
It's possible that certain shows, I actually think our show is a show that really lends itself well to binging. People just seem to really want to consume it in big chunks. So many people reach out to me on social media or whatever and just say, I watched the whole thing in one day, which to me, I like, do you see daylight? But
no, absolutely. It's interesting. And I did last question for a wrap up as well. It's interesting because you're one of the showrunners of this and EP and everything. And the word, it's funny because it's like the word showrunner was attached to television. And, a lot of people have heard executive producer, director and everything. Yeah. But I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, like I wouldn't say a newer term. Like I feel like there always been showrunners, but it's like, some people will say oh, showrunner, what is that? What exactly specifically is the showrunner compared to the creator or executive producer? Can you speak on that a little bit? Because I feel like, do you ever get does people ever talk to you about that at all? Because sometimes you say the showrunner also created it and produced it. Is there anything you could say in regards to that? Because I do find that interesting. Do you ever talk about that at all?
Sure. Showrunner is a term of art. It's not an official credit. It's not. Yeah. It's nowhere in the credits that it says showrunner. It's like the showrunner is the boss of the show. The showrunner is the person who makes the key creative decisions. Typically, they are the head writer or one of the head writers. Mm-hmm. They are the head producer. Yeah. In my case, I also direct, a number of the episodes as well. Yeah. That isn't always the case, right? It depends. But it's the person who, at the end of the day, is responsible. The closest equivalent is the director of a big movie.
Yes, it's definitely a TV thing, though. I feel like it's a TV thing.
It's completely a TV thing, but it's the showrunner in TV is the equivalent of an auteur director in movies or whatever, right? Absolutely. But it's not it's not an official credit, and every show is kind of different in terms of how it works.
Absolutely. Well, it was an honor and pleasure to speak with you, Ted. Thank you so much for your time. The Lincoln Lawyer season 3, people can check. I mean, all seasons are available streaming worldwide now on Netflix, so they can check it out. Great chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Really nice to meet you.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.